Okay, in this next exercise, there's something else that, I mean, basically it's not something complicated, but it just allows you to try something different, which is creating your own classes, your own exception classes. Now that's the main thing. Now I can create my class, my own exception classes, so I can, instead of throwing any kind of exception, I will throw my customized exceptions. Now, as you have seen, the type of exceptions we've been throwing is array index out of bound exceptions that exist already, or anything other type input mismatch exceptions and things like that. Now, if I'd like to have some my different customized exceptions, like for example, a day exception, a month exception, a year exception, when I'm going to write a program that reads the day, a month, and year, and then it will just raise and throw some exceptions if the day is incorrect or the year is not correct and things like that. So we would like to convert dates from numerical to a form more like textual. Like if the user enters 01/01/2015, it's going to display 1 January 2015. And we would like to just deal with the exceptions in case the user gives us a wrong month or a wrong day or a wrong year, because for us the year is going to be this in between these two numbers. So let's try that. So I'm just going to write the code that asks the user to enter the day and month and year. So I'm going to need a scanner, system.in, and then I'm going to read day, month, and then year. Please enter the date please enter the day. Maybe let's do it this way. Enter the day, and then I'm going to put day equal skibi.nextInt, and then copy and paste. Please enter the month and the year. And then what I'd like to display is that something that if it's the 1/1/2015, so I'm going to display 1 January 2015. So basically I just need to check the month. With the month I can use maybe a switch, or maybe if else, if, and if what, if the month is equal to 1, then I'm going to I forgot to change that, month and year. So if the month is equal to 1, then I'm going to display, oh, you know what, I'm going to display the date is the entered date is, and then I'm going to display the day plus some space, and then I'm going to print January with some space. So copy this and paste it here if the month is 2, then I copy and paste 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, I don't need the 12 because this one, if else, is going to be December, November, October, September, August, July, June, May, April. Am I missing something? March, and then February. So now if it's 1, 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and if it's not 11, it should be December. Or is it? Or maybe the user is going to give me something wrong. But I'm going to test that. If the user gives me something wrong, I'm going to generate an exception. I'm not going to display anything. Or maybe I will just say no thanks. And what I'm going to do is maybe do this in a loop. Why it will make more sense to have it in a loop. I'm going to make a boolean just for fun to have a loop that stop is going to be false. And then as long as I'm going to do this at least the first time, and while stop is different than false, I'm going to do this. I forgot to close this. Yeah, so I'm going to repeat this, but stop is always false. I need to ask a question. Before that, I forgot to add the year. So I just need to display the year afterwards, because I'm printing the day, and then a space, and then the month, and then with a space after, and then the year. That is the last thing to display. All right, and so I need to ask a question about, do you want to repeat? Do you want to enter another date? I'm just going to do something like yes or no. Just yes, y or n, and then I need to have a string or char, or say something yes or no. Let's just make it yes and no. And then I'm going to have a string like choice scanner it's my scanner, the key B, and get the next line. I'm getting the whole line, which is, if I type yes, choice is going to be yes, or no, choice is going to be no. And then I don't need this variable, because choice now just going to say if choice is going to be yes, but I cannot see it here because it needs to be declared outside. And then I can ask a question, if choice is equals, remember there's the equals and equals ignore case. I'm going to use this one just for fun. If it's equals to yes, that means I would just like to repeat. Is that true? Because as long as this is true, I'm going to repeat. So I'm going to do this the first time, and then ask, do you want to enter another date? If it's yes, then I'm going to, while this is yes, I'm going to repeat again. If this is no or anything else, I'm just going to get out. Now let's try this. It seems like there's an error message. If I run this thing now, please enter the date, 1 the day, and 1 I don't need to put a space, but 2015. So the enter date is, or the date entered is 1 January 2015. Do you want to enter another date and then said yes, no, and that's build successful, and it stopped? There is no loop there. What happened? The same thing that happened before. Remember the thing that happened with the read line that I had to do? It's the same thing again. Now once we read these, there's something that is getting stuck, and it stays there in the memory. So I can just, maybe before I do this, I just would like to, before I do this, I'm just going to read whatever was left, the enter key that was pressed, because when it reads the number, the enter key was pressed there, or maybe the space that I put there is the problem. So I'm going to remove these and then read the choice. Is it going to work? Let's see. 1/1/2015. Now it's waiting for me to give the answer. Do you want to enter another date? If I type yes, please enter the day. Okay, so it seems to be now working. But it's just going to show me for any number here, like a December. Do you want to enter another date, etc.? Okay, so I'd like to enter no and then stop that.
I delete the line.
This one?
Just the line. Next with line.
Just next?
Yes.
Next just reads one character, one part into the space. No, it's not, it's still not going to work as expected. Okay, that's wonderful. Let's stop this. Okay, so last time where we stopped, just before that alarm started, we were doing this kind of, we don't need this anymore, we changed it. We were just reading some numbers about the day, the month, and the year, and then we are doing, doing some other choice. This choice is mainly just to make it repeat. We just ask, do you want to enter another date, and then we do that to repeat more. I mean, many times until we say no, or anything else then yes. Then this day and month and year are just read, and whatever, I'm just displaying the day and then a space, and then if the month is 1, displaying January, month is 2, February, etc., etc. Okay, and then at the end I just display the year. All those is print, and I'm just printing, not going back to the line. And the one with the year, then I go back to the line, then maybe just put some more lines, so I can just ask, do you want to continue? Yes, no, and then maybe just the user is going to type something. Let's say here, and then it's just going to, if it's yes, I just start again. If it's no, I just stop. Now, if I type, for example, something like this, oh no, because I'm entering each one of them separately. So, and then 2015. So the entered date or date entered is 1 January 2015. You want to continue? I'm just going to say yes. And it's just going to say another date. But now what we did is that you can enter whatever you want. It's just going to be accepted because we did not put any constraints in there. You want to, if whatever I type is going to be a no. So anyways, that's what we did. The entered date is the date entered is, and then, well, that's where we stopped, and we did not put any exceptions yet. And now we're going to be working with the exceptions and what kind of exceptions we're going to be doing. Just a small parenthesis. You see these. This is underlined. It just is just a suggestion by NetBeans. You just have a look at it. It just says convert ifs to switch statement. So if you'd like to use that just to convert this to a switch statement, now it's the month, if it's case 1, 2, 3, etc. And then the default is December, but I'm just going to bring it back how it was. It's not, I'd prefer it to be with this, but that's okay. Now in this exercise, the purpose was to use some custom class exception classes. Now it says you will define 3 exception classes, one called day exception, the other one month exception, and third year exception. Now if the user enters anything other than the legal number of month, like between 1 and 12, the program will throw and catch in a month exception. And similarly with the day and the year. The days basically, they have to be either from 1 to 31 max, depending on the month and the year, and then the program will throw a try catch to the day exception. And then for the year, we just would like to accept between 1000 and 3000. Anything outside of this is going to be generating an exception. Now let's start with the month, because that's easy. We know it's between 1 and 12. It's not 1 and 12. We're going to throw a month exception. So in order for me to throw a month exception, I need to have a class that is going to be called month exception. Now this class month exception, all it has to do is to extend exception. Now before I do this extend, so I just would like to show you why it has to be extend an exception. I can just call it month exception and that's it, but I don't want to do that. And you know what, I'm just going to force it to have just a constructor that is going to take, well, the message later on, but I don't have any message for now. So anyways, I'm just going to do this. I just would like to show you something. Now when the user gives me the numbers, so if it's the month number, if it's 1, 2, 3, 12, 11, if it's 12, I want it to be December. If it's something else, then I'd like to throw an exception. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to add this. So if the month is 12, it's going to be December. And then else, if it's something else, any number that is not 1 to 12, I'd like to throw this month, new month exception. Now I know that this class exists, but I cannot throw it, because what comes after this throw has to be a subclass of an exception. Now actually this is a subclass of object, because by default every class inherits from object. So it's not a subclass of exception. That's why I cannot do this. Now if I would like to make this work, what I should do, I should extend at the extend, or I'll just bring back the extends exception. Now if I am extending an exception, now this one is okay. Hold on, maybe I did not. Let me remove this first, because I did not read the error message that tells here. Here the message is incompatible types. Month exception cannot be converted to throwable, because whatever can be used after the throw, it has to be throwable, and actually an exception is throwable. So that's why, okay, I need to put this extend exception. But even though if I do that, it says now, it's not that it cannot throw it, but there's an exception that is not, that it says that the exception, either it has to be caught, so that means you need to put some kind of try catch, or it has to be declared to be thrown. What does this mean, declared to be thrown? Okay, you remember this thing? I'm just going to take this just so you can understand it better. This is my main, right? I'm just going to call this I don't know, display or check date. Why am I creating this in a new method? Because I just would like you to see the problem. Private static void check date, and then just everything that was inside the main, I'm just putting it here. And you still have this problem. I just would like to show you the options outside of the main, so I don't think that this has to be always in the main. It has to be in any method. It can be in the main, but in any method this has to be done. So what are the options is that it tells me add throws to this exception, which means if I take this option, now I don't have the problem, but what happened is that I'm mentioning that this private static, this method check date, it will throw a month exception, which is just saying that I'm not catching the exception here, but whomever is going to be using this method has to catch it. When you use this method now, you see this one now becomes a problem, because this throws an exception. If I remove this, there's no problem here, because I'm not saying that this method is throwing any exceptions, it's not generating any exceptions, so I can just call it anytime, no problems. But this method has a problem. I cannot just do something like this. I'm going to throw an exception. If I'm throwing an exception, I have two options. Either I'm making the method to be throwing the exception, or I catch the exception myself. Now by doing this throw the exception, I'm not managing the exception. I'm not dealing with the exception. I'm just throwing it. The one who is going to be using my method is going to have to deal with it. Which means if someone is going to call this, then for example he has to do some kind of surround statement with try catch, or he can make this also throws a month exception. So it's like, if you remember, like this abstract method. If you have an abstract class, if you have one class that has an abstract method, or if you inherit from an interface or an abstract class, you have either two options. Either you implement all the abstract methods, or you become abstract. That's something similar. If you throw an exception, you have two options. Either you catch it yourself by putting some kind of try catch somewhere here inside this method, or you mention that this is going to throw an exception. And that's the thing here that is happening here. So that's why it's telling me, although this is throwing some kind of exception. So either you manage it, or you mention that those who are going to be calling this method might have to manage that. Now what I'm going to choose now is this surround the try catch with this try catch, and then this is something that I don't want to talk about, but this is just to display some kind of information. And now I'm just going to say, okay, there was a problem with the month. Now this try catch is in the main. It's outside of here. That means because that shows to make this throws an exception. That's one way to do things. I'm not going to stay with that, but I just would like to show you. Okay, see, the date is, and then I'd say 54. The 54 comes from, well, this is the day, right? So that's why it displayed the day and then put a space, and then after the space there was an exception that was thrown, and then when the exception that was thrown, I did not display the year, so it went here and they displayed there was a problem with the month. That's why I'm seeing that there was a problem with the month. Now this is how I deal it. If I'm throwing an exception, I need to catch it here, or specify that someone else is going to deal with it. But now I don't want to do this. What I'm going to do is that's why basically there was a loop, is that as soon as there is a try catch, I'm just going to do something else. Now I don't want to display the date is, so I'm just going to do something. Text date. I'm just going to prepare this to be inside the string like this. So I'm putting text date to be this thing, and then whenever there's something I'm not displaying, I'm just going to add this to the date. So I'm just going to do this. This is just to deal with the how to generate, and just to deal with the display, basically, to display something only when there is no exception. So I'm preparing the text which is going to be displayed, but I'm not displaying it until I'm sure that there's no exception. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, June, July. Let me just do this. And the last one. And let's remove these parentheses. It should be fine. And similarly, in this here, instead of displaying the year, I'm just going to add it. So I'm adding to the text the year. Now, I'm going to display this only if there's no problem. So this is what I'm going to display, this text of date. However, if I reach this line, that means there was no exception. But this is going to, if there's an exception, I'm not going to reach this line, so it's going to break up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this thing, and then if there is an exception, I'm going to put in a try catch. Now I know that by default that might be a month exception, and just quite X. Now if there's a month exception, I'm just going to say there was a problem with the month. Probably like do something like error. There was a problem with the month. Yes.
You change the system.out to system.err.
If you do that ERR, the only difference is that it's going to show in red. Yeah, you're right. But I'm not interested. Yeah, but if you can, yeah, just to have a look at it. If you just run this now, we put some 1, 111, and then 1. This is showing error. There was a problem with the month, and this is the ERR. But if it's out, it's not going to be in red. That's the only problem. But if you like it, you can just put it in system.out system.err instead of system.out. So now if you do something like this, just get it this color. But if you like it, yeah, you can just keep it. I think it makes more sense to make it in red. It looks better.
You can differentiate between the text and the error.
Exactly. Okay, so this is how to deal with the month exception. Now, if there was no exception at all, now let's say for example, do you want to start again? Yes. And then I'm going to enter some thing. So it's just going to display the date 1 November. Why? Because it just puts all this information, the date entered is, it just saved it into this text date, and then it adds the month and then the year, and then displays it. But if there's any exception in the process, it's just going to raise an exception. Now what I'm going to do, I dealt with the month exception. I can just maybe deal with it a little bit better by just putting the message inside if I want to. Instead of me putting the message here, I can just put it here. So inside here, I just can display just the get message. So it will just display the message instead of me putting it here. So whatever the message we're going to be, I'm going to display it. But now there's a problem because there's no constructor that takes one string as an argument. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add just that one. And I'm going to use the one that is going to call in the superclass with the message, and whatever the message is going to be, just send it up. Now this is going to allow me to get the message and display it the way that whatever I'm writing, I'm sending here to the constructor is going to be the message that I'm going to be able to get. So no. I wanted an exception, but not a good time. Okay. Now there's an exception, so this message was displayed, which is basically the message that I sent. Okay, now I'd like to do the same with the year. So let's create another one with the year exception. And basically it is going to extend the same thing, and let's just use the same constructor. So now before adding this, before this line, I'm just going to say that if the year is not respecting the condition that was given here, so if the year is not between 1000 and 3000, I'm going to generate an exception. So if the year is less than 1000, or the year is greater than 3000, I'm just going to throw a new exception. Year exception, and then what is the text that I'm going to put? Well, you know what, I'm going to just, because I don't want to repeat the same thing, I'm just going to say year. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do the same thing here. I just would like to display all this. I'm going just to make this constructor now month. And then what is going to happen is that inside this message, well, I'm just going to do this. And instead of the month, I'm just going to make a message. Just so now I'm just doing this thing. I'm going to do the same here. So what I did here now is that I am just throwing the month. This text month is going to be the text, but this message that I'm sending it to the superclass with this error. There was a problem with the month, and then I'm sending it upwards. So in the superclass is going to be like initialized with there was an error message with the month. And this one is going to do the same, but there was an error message with the year. But you know what? I don't really need to mention, if it's a month exception, it should always be a month. So what I'm going to do, just remove this and put the month here. And then the same thing with the year here. And what I'm going to make it is even better than what I was before. And then you don't need to even mention anything. Just call the month exception or the year exception, and then it's going just to, when you use the get message, it's going to do the same thing. Now it's giving me a problem because I'm not catching this year exception. I'm catching, I mean this month exception, but not the year exception. And the year exception, yeah, I forgot to remove this one. In the year exception, I need to catch it, so I need to do the same thing here with the year exception. Okay, so now if it's a month or year exception, I'm going to catch it, and let's just try that. So if I do the month and the year, now all of these have problems, but because of the sequence, it checks, it throws a month exception first, and then when there's a month exception, it just stops there. That's why I'm not seeing the other exception. So there was a problem with the month, and then do you want to enter another date? Yes. So now if you enter the month right, but then the year is not okay, there was a problem with the year. And I can do also the same thing with the day, but I just would like to show you that maybe, because you see there's not much difference between the two. I'm always displaying the get message. I'm just going to catch the whole exception. By catching the exception, I'm just, whatever the problem was, I will just use the get message, and the get message is going to be which one I just called, depending on the exception that was raised. So now if I run it again with this one, and then 55 or whatever, so there was a month, there was a problem with the month, and then yes, if I type 5 and then something, there was a problem with the year. So it just keeps doing everything. I'm just going to add something, so if the choice is, so I don't have to type always this long yes, if I type also y, is going to be enough for me to restart. And then what I need to do now is to show you this. There's some I'd like you to have a look at what does this mean, because this is something I did not talk about it, which is this can be written differently by replacing with the MultiCatch exception. Now there's one catch that catches all the exceptions, but I can do also this. Which means now, in this same catch, I can catch either it's a month exception or a year exception, whatever happened between these two type of exceptions, then put it in this variable and then get the message of it. The result of this is that I don't have to just catch all exceptions. I'm catching only the ones that I'm specifying here. But I might be able to need to catch more than those, because what if, for example, if I do something like this? So I might just leave it as like sorry, it was like this exception. But the problem is that if I do something like I did, just going to show me this null. So maybe I will just do this thing and then add another one, catch another one with the exception, regardless of what exception. If there's something else that was a problem, I'm just going to display there was a problem. Oh, by the way, sout, I think is ERR, is the one that displays system.err. sout displays the system.out. SERR displays the system.err.println. So if I'd like to display an error message like this, this is the shortcut for it. And then if there's any problem, I'm just going to say, okay, error, there was a problem with the input values. So now I'm catching these specific exceptions. If each one of these happen, I'm just going to get the message because I know that I prepared the message. But if something else, I'm not sure if there's a get message is going to be giving me some useful information or not. I'm just going to display my own information here. And let's stop. So instead of having this null now, I'll be able to have a much better result. So yes, enter another one, and then now if I type this, and then there's a problem with the month, so I'm just going to show me that problem. So now the last one is with the day. So if I'd like to deal with the day, what I need to do is, if there was a problem with the day, if the day is not correct, I could just ask a question to know if the day is correct or not. But how do I know that if the day is correct? Because sometimes if I put, let's say, 31 of February, that is not okay. Yes?
The code should ask for the month before the day. So it checks the month before it checks the day.
Well, I can just ask for all the data, and then later on I do the checking. Because I'm not displaying immediately, I'm just checking first, then I'm raising some exceptions, and then I'm displaying at the end. That's why I put these text dates, because this is going to be the last thing that happens. If there was an exception somehow, this is not going to be reached, so it's going to not display the date. But now if I'd like to check the data, I need to do some different ways how to check it. If I'd like to check the date first, now for example, if I know that this is going to be the January, maybe on the max I know that the maximum number is going to be 31. So what I could do though is I could do, for example, something like this. Maybe I'm going to have like max day, and then I don't know what kind of, put -1, because I need to initialize it with something. And then if it's January, I'm going to say the max day is going to be 31. And with February, the max 29, because some years there's 28, some years it's 29. And then with March, 31. And then with April, 30. With May, 31. You know, we have this, when you fist, if you just start from the left to the right, you just start from the right to the left. You just count this January, then in the in the bone, you see this is 31. When you go into the curve in between bones, it's less than 31, just to be, because it's February. I think it's 30 except for February, which is going to be 29. And so you have January, February, March is 31, and then April 30, and then May 31, and then June 30, then July 31, and then you go back to the other side, and then it's August 31, and then you get it with the September 30, etc. Which this is going to, it just keeps doing this. So it's now, so far it's going to be 31, 30, 31, 13 until it reaches, so this is until it reaches August. Is it? Am I? So 30, 31, 30, 31, and then August is going to be 31, and then September is 30, October 31, November 30, and the last one 31. Now that I know this, after getting this, I know now I can ask about the day. So if there was a problem with the day, I can just say if the day is less than 1, or the day is greater than max day, then I'm going to throw a new, but I need to create the exception first. So I'll go here, I'm just going to copy one of these, copy and paste, and then I'm going to call it day exception. And then there was a problem with the day. And then, okay, so I'm just going to throw now this new day exception. Now I'm just going to, also because I'd like to display the get message, I'm going to add this day to here. So now I'm adding either day exception. If it's a day exception, a month exception, or a year exception, just display the get message. If not, display this message. If for any other option, any other exceptions, display this message. Now if I run this thing, this is going to work inshallah fine. If of course there's a problem with the year, it's going to be the year. Okay, let's just make a problem with the month. Now there's a problem with the month, and then the problem with the day. Now if it's 0, okay, that wasn't what I wanted. If it's 0, then there's a problem with the day. And yes, let's try again with if it's more than what it is. Let's say 31.2. There's no 31.2, so there was a problem with the day. So I can get something. Actually, we can be more specific, because some years, even 29 of February, for some years it's not going to be okay. And we can just do the calculation with the leap year or not leap year, but I'm not interested into that, because the main thing here is about throwing and catching exceptions and working with customized exceptions. I can just customize my exceptions to say, for example, to send this day as a parameter, so I can display it. For example, now for this day exception, now this one takes an int as the day. This is like the value that was given. I can just say the what I wanted to do is to mention, like, add this is not valid. So I'm just saying that there was a problem with the day, and then the number that was given here is not valid. So basically what is going to show up is that regardless of the message is going to be displayed, I'm just preparing here the message that this one, for example, this new day exception, it will need first of all to get, if you're raising that day exception, I'm just looking for it, here it is. It will always need to send the day. I mean, this value was maybe a problem, and then it's going to display that value again. So this is just to make a small, oh no, I did not Okay, let's just put the day that is a problem. Say 31 and then 2 and whatever year, and there was a problem with the day. 31 is not valid. So that's pretty much it, what I wanted to show you. But basically we did not do much. Is we can have a try inside of another try. I can just have like some kind of, let's say, is even here. I can maybe try to do another try inside of a catch, and you can put a try into a catch, and that's something. You can also put a try inside of another try. I can have some kind of a try catch. You see, this is a try, and then inside of this try I can maybe have another try catch just to catch these exceptions about these ones, just for the day or whatever. I can put whatever nesting of these try catch as much as is needed. What I mean with that is that, for example, what if I'd like to, if there was an exception that I'd like to ask to give me the date again. Now, if the day again, let's say if there was an exception here. Now, if there's an exception, I just would like to ask, okay, give me again the date. So I'm going to say, okay, try whatever this happened. Try enter the day. If there was an exception, catch that exception, and then ask, there was a problem with the day, please enter the day again. Or wrong input. And then let's put it like this. So it will display an error message, and then I'm trying to catch this. But then if this again, the next time there was also a problem, then this one is going to catch it. So the first time I'm going to give him like a chance. If we fix it the first time, I'm going to continue, because now if I run it and it gives me like the first time there was a problem. So it says wrong input, please enter the day. But you remember this is still the same problem with this, when you have this key B and you have to try to read it again. So before reading it again, I just would like to flush that buffer by doing this next line. So if there was an exception, I'm just going to go to the next line, so it will not run it again. Okay. So if I type something like this, it says wrong input, please enter the day again. So this is I'm now here. It's the error, wrong input is here, please enter the day. I'm here. And then if I make a mistake again, now this is going to throw an exception. This one is going to throw an exception that is inside this try. It's going to be caught here, and then I'm going to see there was a problem with the input values. So let's see that. And then just it went back and so on. So this is just to show you that basically I can have a nested try catch. Now if I put this one wrong, and okay, now this is not there was no exception there, but this is still wrong because the month also was wrong. But anyways, because this is happening because the first exception that can be thrown is about the month, and then the day comes after the month, because I need to know what's the max day. But my point is, you can just have a lot of nesting if you want, as many as you want, as you need it. But generally you don't want to do a lot of too many nestings, because you can get lost in the who's catching what and when. So that's it. I'm going to stop here.